It's time for Perspective on the programme, and it is a year since the death in prison of the Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny. Navalny, of course, a long-time critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The 47-year-old died while serving a 19-year prison sentence in a corrective colony in the Russian Arctic. Well, one of those who knows his story better than many others is my guest today. Producer Odessa Rae is here in Paris to take part in a screening and discussion of her film, Navalny, at Paris's Sciences Po University. You'll remember probably the film itself won the award for Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars in 2022. Before we talk, let's just watch a quick bit of the trailer for it.
Okay, so Alexei, I want to talk about something that we sort of touched on this morning. And you might hate this, but I really want you to think about it. If you are killed, if this does happen, what message do you leave behind to the Russian people?
Alexei Navalny has taken on the most dangerous job in the world, challenging the leader of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin.
If I want to be a leader of this country, if I want to fight Putin, I have to organize people.
Война в Украине и война в Сирии. Я прекращу войну.
The Kremlin hates Navalny so much, they refuse to say his name.
I was banned from everything and blacklisted. But as I became more and more famous, I was totally sure that it will be problematic for them to kill me.
And boy, were you wrong.
Yes, I was very wrong.
Yeah, the film trailer there for Navalny. Well, Odessa Rae joins us now here in the studio. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us. So a year on then from Alexei Navalny's death. I mean, what will it be like to watch the film once again and talk about it later on today?
Well, I've actually watched the film since he died, and it was a very different experience. You know, I lived with Alexei Navalny for, I guess, almost three and a half months in the Black Forest between coming out of the coma and return to Russia. And he's really one of the most extraordinary humans that I have ever met. And he has such a great sense of humor that before his death, I used to watch the film and I'd laugh and we'd all laugh. And now it's funny, as you know, as I watch the film after his death, it's like the wind's been knocked out of you.
What was his mental state like at the point when you were living with him then?
Really strong, you know. Navalny was someone who is driven by a deep belief in and a hope for the future, a better future for his country, for the world, for international relations, and he was always someone who was very hopeful.
And how did you get the access in the first place, you and the team? How did you manage to persuade him to let you do what you wanted to do?
It sort of went in stages. In the beginning, I was actually working on a completely other documentary in Ukraine with Christo Grozev, who's one of the founders of Bellingcat. And Christo, I realized, was working on the poisoning of Navalny after he was poisoned separately from knowing him, and I got Christo to arrange a meeting. And about 3 weeks later, we rented a car in Vienna, myself, Christo, and Daniel Rohr, who directed, I produced, but we really just shared everything when you're two people in the Black Forest and a camera, you know. We drove into the Black Forest, where he was staying in a tiny little town after coming out of the coma. And I'll always remember that first night meeting Alexei, where we walked in and sort of presented ourselves as, you know, don't you think you're in this amazing moment and maybe we should just film it, right? And he's quite suspicious and careful about who he lets in, of course, to his inner circle. And so it went in stages. So I said to him on that very first meeting, you know, we don't have to sign anything. We don't have to guarantee anything. Let's just film. And 2 weeks in, 2 months in, if you don't like it, we'll stop and we'll give you all the footage. And he required a few things, like he wanted to look through our bank accounts to make sure we weren't receiving any payments from foreign governments, that we weren't spies, you know. And it sort of started like that.
I mean, I suppose that shows, doesn't it, the threat that he was under, that he felt the need, understandably, to do what he did.
Yeah, exactly. The constant threat. And here were these two unknown. I think it helped that Daniel and I were also Canadian. So it's sort of like a little bit of a neutral nation. And we proceeded like that. But of course, and this was COVID, so nothing, everything started shutting down. We couldn't even leave Germany or else we couldn't go back. And you build a relationship and you build a rapport. And as it went on, I think he realized we were part of the team,
And very much the film shows as well how Vladimir Putin was responsible for what happened.
Yes, it does, very clearly.
How does it do that? Tell our viewers who haven't seen it.
From the investigation, you can see that the kill team, who is part of the FSB, followed Alexei Navalny for several years until they actually attempted to poison him. And then in the film, there's a very important scene which we shot in our little Airbnb at 4:35 in the morning, where they prank call the killers. And one of the killers, he was actually on the cleanup crew. So I think he wasn't like the core team that like everyone sort of called each other, because they started calling and people were like, oh no, so, they recognized Navalny's voice and they were calling. But this guy was on the cleanup crew, so he was sort of like down the chain of who should be called. And he started talking, and Alexei Navalny, he just appealed to him in a way that got him to start talking, and what transpired was a 50-minute, almost an hour-long conversation where he confessed to the actual planning and how they strategically carried out Alexei's poisoning.
Let's talk about some of your other work as well. You produced Ibrahim Neshat's film. He was actually a guest on the programme just a couple of weeks ago, Hollywoodgate on Afghanistan. What was it like working on that as well?
Also very stressful in different ways. We had to, Ibrahim was embedded with the Taliban for 1 year after the US pullout, so it very much shows the result of 4 administrations that led a 20-year war in Afghanistan, and what was left of the war machine and what was to come. And we had so many difficult things to deal with on that film. Like, we had to extract our team, obviously, in order to show the film. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been safe in Afghanistan. And this was through different channels, getting them to neighboring nations, then lobbying European countries to let them in at a time when asylum seekers were not being accepted anymore. So this was a very difficult documentary to make, yeah.
And just finally, you become known, quite rightly, for telling stories that kind of shed light on pressing global issues. What is it that drives you to do that?
Well, I grew up internationally. My father still lives in Hong Kong. I grew up in India, Hong Kong, Japan, Paris for a bit when I was in young adult, London. And I think I actually was a global politics student at university, and I've always been interested in finding the connections between humanity, because essentially, I think when I was in high school in Japan, that's sort of where it started. I was in the remote countryside of Ishikawa Prefecture, and wearing a little sailor girl uniform. I haven't gone far. The little sailor girl uniform to school every day, and I sort of realized that even though this place is so different and so far away from everywhere else I'd lived, we're all still essentially the same. We want the same things. We wake up in the morning tired if we haven't slept well, and wanting to hug our loved ones. And I think I was always driven by a desire to create more understanding of the world. And
that's what you've done with your films.
That's what I continue to do,
Odessa
hopefully.
Rae, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us on the programme today. Odessa Rae, who'll be at Sciences Po University this evening.
No, last night.
Oh, it was
actually.
last night.
Yeah,
Sorry, I thought it was tonight. Okay.
No, all good. We had a great
Good to have you
screening.
on the programme. I'm glad it went well.
It went
Odessa
well.
Rae with us here on France 24. Thanks very much.